We had pictures of, at our facility in Michigan where they took dining trays out and did sledding. And it didn't happen every time. It just, hopefully there's enough snow. But it was just one of those things where, okay, now people, when they're considering going, maybe this will end up being a better situation than the situation they're currently living in, in the act of addiction. And maybe there is something where they can actually start to figure out their joy during this holiday season versus it being kind of a negative.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to MasterMined. I'm Mark Scrivner, your host and CEO of Snapshot. I'm joined, as always, by my fabulous co-host, Jeff Skillen with Skillset Enterprises. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark. This is going to be an exciting episode.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to this one. And Lee Pepper, author of the new marketing book, Never Outmatched.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, Lee, it's great to have you on the show. Today we're digging into a topic that a lot of people feel, but they really never talk about, and that's the holiday slump. I'm really excited to jump into this show. So, guys, let's kick this one off.
Mark, I think that your opening sentence is what I heard so many times. If things were going well, nobody mentioned it. But as soon as there was a little bit of a census dip, everybody would say, well, it's the holidays. It's holiday slump. Like that's supposed to be a shield. So I'm glad that we're talking about this.
Yeah. Does it? Do you guys see this every year in the industry? Is it through a lot of the programs that you work with? Is this a common theme, or is it just something nobody talks about?
All right, no. So let's just get right to it, okay? I think most of us know how to read a calendar. Most of us do, right? But yet somehow we seem shocked every year that July 4 happens, that Thanksgiving happens, that Christmas happens.
Labor Day.
And that Labor Day happens. I think people are just shocked because somehow next year it's going to be different. When the reality of it is the same pretty much every year. And there are predictable cycles, but yet, as soon as that cycle is over, it's like, whew, survived another one. And then we wait until the exact same thing happens next year.
Yeah. I can only assume that over the holidays, and none of us are clinicians, but over the holidays, there are a lot of triggering events that happen to people. And I would think the need might be even more than it is throughout the year. But there is always this little bit of a slump, a slowdown.
Well, I think we recognize that there is a slump, but I think where Jeff and I come at it is that you can prepare for it.
Okay.
And there are mitigating factors that you can apply so that your center doesn't feel the impact. And so, I think traditionally what I've experienced is that January, it's like a rocket ship. Deductibles reset. People got their new insurance programs. They've been with their families. They've been triggered. They're now calling in. So January would be a huge, and then you start to kind of see this drift then down. February, not usually a great month because it's shorter. So all of a sudden, if you're not budgeting correctly, you might maybe have a slight miss. And then the same thing happens over the summer, and it's because if you're especially reliant on professional relationships, well, guess what? Therapists and psychiatrists and professional referrers, they go on vacation. Like their businesses are closed too. And so the same thing happens between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so I think that the challenge is you have to accept it and you have to plan for it ahead of time. That you can't call your marketing team on December 15th and say, what happened to my census? Like you need to be having that conversation maybe in July. Like, what are we going to do to address this?
Or if you're doing it like an annual planning cycle, it's like as you're planning for the year, you're going ahead and you're anticipating these slumps. And Lee is generally right. And it's like, and I will say that there are some specialty populations that they have their own sort of seasonality,
Sure.
Like
That's
you might
fair.
follow a school year or you might follow, a work schedule or something like that. But there are predictability cycles. And it's like you only need a couple of years of history to actually see where those happen. And it's like, okay, where things dip census-wise or things dip lead-wise, then it's like you need to put some energy into the market to then raise that trough. But you can plan for that and you can budget for that a year in advance.
Yeah. Is there any correlation? We talked about summer slump maybe and the holiday slump. Is there any correlation of like summer and, oh, man, census is down, let's cut back on marketing a little bit, and then it's
no,
like,
that's
oh,
the
man,
wrong.
We need to,
that's
you
the
see
instinct.
this, and then it's like, let's ramp this thing back up because, man, census is still down because we cut back on marketing, and now we're going into the holidays at another slump time.
I mean, unfortunately, it's the same reaction that causes people to sell stocks at the bottom.
Oh boy, that's a good analogy.
It's human nature that basically says all of a sudden you feel a little tightness, and then it's like, I got to cut. And that is precisely, you need to lean into your Warren Buffett instinct here, which is, it's like when you feel the tightness, that's the time that you need to be stepping on the gas. And ideally, you've stepped on the gas before you feel that trend going in the downward direction.
And a lot of times I think people only have the one or two levers to pull, and this is another good example of you need to have multiple levers, not just, well, the only thing I can do is I can just run paid search. I can put more into paid search. Like, you need to be exploring these other channels that can potentially also, help you. And you can plan for that early. And I think a lot of times we just assume that business development, professional relations, like that's just going to be a slump. Well, that's the time where you need to have the conversation to say that, okay, if we know that therapists are going to be closing their shops for the holidays, then that means your team has got to go visit. They've got to have more meaningful activities
in different
in October and November. You can't just say, well, all my referrents are closed. Like, okay, well, those that are closed, you need to go visit more, have more meaningful activities, ramp that up. And I think a lot of times we kind of forget that.
Or having an event they want to attend.
Sure, exactly.
It's like you don't necessarily have to go to their offices. I mean, you could create some sort of activity or meaningful engagement where they engage with your program or your outside of the office scenario.
Yeah.
It's like you got to change it up is what you have to do.
And then with your digital marketing, I mean, if you're going to, a lot of times people just say, well, I'm going to just throw out a number. So I'm going to spend $10,000 a month on paid search as an example. And they just do $10,000 every month. Well, you may need to be spending maybe only $4,000 or $5,000 in January because you're going to natural search is going to be at a high, and you need to sprinkle some of those extra dollars into October, November, December. Like it shouldn't just be a static. Like you should be, and then you also need to be thinking about, okay, well, if I am going to be doing some of these events for professionals, then you need to be maybe putting some dollars into social media to kind of help promote that too.
Right.
You can't just assume that we're just going to mail postcards. And so I think all this can be thought out ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with the portfolio analogy because I think it's helpful in this scenario. Because we're talking about seasonal slump. It's like it is not the same slump across all segments of your lead funnel, right? So it's like alumni has different sort of temperature, business development has sort of a different sort of temperature, and then digital has sort of a different temperature as well. And you need to have a plan in terms of, like, you may only have a limited number of marketing dollars, but you can reallocate where those marketing dollars go to then mitigate the slumps. And so, like, stick with the portfolio is like, sometimes it's like you're going to want to juice your holdings in the value segment, or sometimes you're going to want to, have a more balanced approach, or you're going to really lead into the growth segment. But it's going to be measured up against not your needed numbers. It's going to measure up against the seasonal activity that you've charted over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I bet you that like over the holidays or going into any of these time periods, admissions and the admissions intake process is more important than ever. Like, we cannot get it wrong during this time. Is that what you guys?
Well, I would say that also at the end of the year, it's the deductibles have been met. Like, you have a little bit easier path to getting folks in if you're running an insurance-based program than you do even in January in the first quarter. So you need to your admissions team needs to be prepared with that kind of language so that when they're trying to work with a family to overcome the barrier, this is the time to overcome the financial barrier. Right now, you also have to depending on where your program is situated. I mean, we had a program, in Michigan, and we had travel issues, and we had to budget for that. We had to account for that. That sometimes it was hard to fly in and get patients, from the airport up in Michigan because you had snow and weather, and that needs to be, again, a conversation you have earlier in the year, not in the moment.
Well, and go ahead and address the anticipated objections early. It's like the rap that you're used to doing or the talk track that you're using with the admissions team needs to adjust based upon what time of year you're actually doing it. So you address those, obvious objections that people are going to have. And so, Mark, you mentioned that, holidays can be a time where you feel like the need may surge. That's true, but it's also a time where people are going to be like, you know what, I'm going to white knuckle through the holidays. And then what tends to happen is like kind of a boomerang effect on the backside of the holidays. So it's like they may be experiencing that situation, but they're certainly not going to be seeking help at that stage.
And they're nervous about, sending little Johnny to treatment, during the holidays, and what are they going to do about Thanksgiving and Christmas? And you guys, and maybe the audience knows, my youngest son, is currently in the Army. And that's also something the military has to deal with. Well, do they want to go to basic training AIT during the holidays? And I can tell you, they do a great job, because we were just out at Fort Huachuca for Thanksgiving, and they were talking about the big Thanksgiving spread that they had for the troops, and we got to go out there and visit him. And so that's something too. Like, you want to educate your admissions team to talk about the special things you're doing for the folks that are there during this month, right? That you're having a great Thanksgiving spread, that you're doing something for Christmas, and that you maybe are doing some nonprofit activities that they can be involved in, so that it's not it actually is a good time to go to treatment, not that, it's so sad they're going to be away.
I mean, and your best weapon for that is your organic social at that point, because then what you're doing is like photos of, here's what we do at Thanksgiving, and here's what people are grateful for, and that type of thing, and then here's what we do at Christmas, and here's how we celebrate the 4th of July, and put that out there, and not with stock images and stock footage and stuff like that.
Please don't do stock images.
Please do not do stock images, right? But your organic social is probably the best way, and you get in front of that, so that way it's like, again, you're dealing with the anticipated objections early.
We had pictures of, at our facility in Michigan, where they took dining trays out and did sledding. And it didn't happen every time. It just, hopefully there's enough snow. But it was just one of those things where, okay, now people, when they're considering going, maybe this will end up being a better situation than the situation they're currently living in, in the act of addiction. And maybe there is something where they can actually start to figure out their joy during this holiday season versus it being kind of a negative.
Yeah.
But you've got to get that message out to your BD team, to your alumni team, to your admissions team, so that they can actively talk about it and share.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, just sticking with this idea, organic social is great for people who are following you on social media. But what if you put together a marketing piece that the business development team could go out and say, here's a little photo book of what we do at Christmas. Here's a photo book about what we do at Thanksgiving. And now it's real to the people. So it's like those same images packaged in a different way tell the story that just says, you know what, we're in front of this. We're in front of the situation, and here's what you can expect.
Yeah, Jeff, that's a great idea. And I think what I've heard a lot is just that proactivity. And I'm sure we're talking about, the holiday slump with some programs. There are probably as many programs that never see it because they've just been proactive, never taken their foot off the gas all year long, no matter what's happening. Do you guys see that quite a bit?
My personal experience has been that the larger programs are the ones that struggle. I think the most, because they've got so many more beds maybe to service, and I think that they could learn something from these smaller programs that really have a kind of a different esprit de corps in how they approach with their staff. And then I think it's also fair to say that that's also a time when your staff is taking vacation, and so that might be an opportunity for a larger company maybe to take some beds offline if they need to do a refresh, or some capital improvements. You can kind of plan out your strategy so that you're not missing budget per se.
Well, I mean, up until now, we've talked primarily about sort of the top of the funnel in terms of bringing people in, but what about keeping people from leaving? So that's the other thing is like, yes, we can do things to, with the meals and the activities and things that make it special, but at the same time, it's like, go ahead and anticipate the fact that people are going to want to leave early. So put some energy into some AMA blocking and things, and just anticipate that, and get your staff trained to say, these are the behaviors that you might see. These are the conversations that you might hear. Have a plan for how you're going to address them.
Yeah.
And they're going to be different at the holidays than they are, in just April, for example.
Do you guys see the operational issues start to take effect? Like we talked about, people taking vacation, staffing's down, and then it ramps up significantly in January. do we see, what kind of operational issues do you guys see
Well, I think if
there?
you've got a really good COO or an executive director, I think hopefully they're handling that ahead of time so they know what that vacation schedule is looking like. But yeah, that's certainly something you want to you want that holiday vacation schedule known, like in September, versus
you wanna,
let's talk about it here and it's November 1st and it's too late.
Well, and then think about them. Like your admissions team, for example, they you have to make sure that you have consistent coverage, over most hours of the clock, right? So it's like that schedule needs to be known 6 months in advance. So it's like, what, last year I had to work on Christmas. This year, somebody else is going to. But the sooner you know that, the better.
And I think that, for some of the programs, we do a couple of the programs I work with, we do local television appearances. And part of that, we then, force multiply it. But it's also something that, if you want to help overcome some barriers, like maybe you lean more into local. Because if you're trying to think about flying people in for your program, okay, that there could be some challenges there with travel and weather. So you might have to take some of your planning and say, what are we going to do more regionally and locally, right, to give our admissions team an easier path to getting that person in.
Yeah. I just want to ask you both the same question, but just one piece of advice you'd give to a behavioral health leader to make sure that they can mitigate the holiday slump.
Well, for me, Jeff, it's document. Like this should be something that is documented months in advance, and you should not be afraid to write it down so that you're holding your team accountable and everybody knows what the plan is instead of trying to remember, did we talk about this? I mean, I think documentation for me is really important.
Mm-hmm. Having the plan.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, 20 pages, and especially now with AI. I mean, you can have a meeting and have AI kind of annotate it for you,
Yeah.
I would say I agree with Lee, but this is sort of a side effect of that, which is that tightness in your gut that you get when the census drops. You need to remind yourself that it's like you knew it was coming. Mm-hmm. And you need to have a little bit of grace around that situation and around it's like just because you feel that tightness, you don't want the rest of your organization to feel that tightness as well, because you have to operate as though everyone's doing the best they can with the situation that they're in, right? So as a leader, you need to deal with your own emotions so that doesn't spill out in another direction. And that's why the plan is so important, because if you want, people bring their own sort of, feelings around working on the holidays. It's like you want this to be a giving experience. You want this to be something where people want to work on, because they're helping people, right? But if you add that additional pressure because census is dipping because you didn't plan appropriately or whatever, it's like you're really only making the situation 5-10x worse.
Yeah. This has been great, a great episode. Is there anything, guys, that maybe I didn't ask or that you think the audience would
I like it.
need
Short
to
and
hear?
sweet. Don't overcomplicate it. I mean, this is something that can be overcome.
Yeah.
Like, don't just take for granted that seasonality. Well, we're gonna have a terrible November, December. I don't think you should accept that.
Right. The gift is that you have an opportunity to plan, because you know what these patterns are going to be, and you know what's going to happen around the holidays. And so the gift is proactive planning. And if you have that in place, rely upon your plan, and you will already do better than just, being hit by a storm.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway that I took. Proactive planning, and almost like that multi-pronged approach of not just, your marketing, but your alumni, your intake,
your
your
blocking.
Operations, everything that happens is one component of helping you get through this time. So thank you, guys. Thanks for being on the show again today, and thank you for bringing it. And that wraps today's conversation. On behalf of Lee, Jeff, and the entire MasterMined crew, I want to thank you for being a part of MasterMined. If today's episode sparked any ideas or questions from you, please leave them in the comments section, and we'd be happy to get back to you. Subscribe, rate, and review this show so that we can get this message out to more behavioral health leaders. Thank you. Happy holidays, and we'll see you next week.
That wraps up this episode of MasterMined. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, MasterMined is not just a podcast, it's a community. So don't forget to comment, subscribe, and review us. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content that's relevant and relatable. Thanks again to our sponsor, Snapshot, a digital media marketing agency. And thank you for joining us on MasterMind, your behavioral health playbook.